Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So, if you're aiming to become a solicitor in England and Wales, you've definitely heard about the solicitor's qualifying examination, a big hurdle.
hmm
Today, we're really getting into part two, the SQE2. And this one, well, it's not about just knowing the law, it's about using it, practical skills.
That's the core of it. And thanks to you, we've got some excellent source material. We've got insights from people who've actually passed the CQE2.
Real experiences.
Exactly. And we're balancing that with the official information from the SRA, the Solicitors Regulation Authority.
Right. So our mission today is basically to unpack all of this. We want to understand the structure, the nitty-gritty, figure out the challenges.
It's tough.
Yeah, and crucially, pull out those preparation strategies that actually work for people who've been through it.
And it's worth stressing, the SQE2 is, well, it's quite different from your typical university exam. It's designed to feel like real solicitor work.
So passing it needs a specific game plan.
Absolutely. A specific approach, the right mindset. And hopefully this deep dive will shed some light on that.
Okay, let's start unpacking. First things first. SQE2. What is it fundamentally and why the big focus? It's stage 2. You have to pass SQE1 first or have an exemption. That much we know.
That's right. And its real importance lies in that practical focus. SQE1 tests your functioning legal knowledge, basically, what you know. SQE2 tests if you can apply it.
Like a day one solicitor.
Precisely. Can you actually do the tasks required right from the start?
Now, the pass rate is interesting. The sources say it's around 77% for SQE2, which is way higher than SQE1's, like 53%.
It is, yeah. Significantly higher. But, and this is a big but from the candidates.
Don't get complacent.
Exactly. Don't let that number fool you. It's still described as really demanding, needs serious, dedicated prep.
Why the higher rate then, do you think?
Well, the thinking is many taking CQ2 might have already started their qualifying work experience, QWE, so they've got some practical grounding already.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. It helps bridge that gap.
It certainly seems to, but it's definitely not a walk in the park, even with experience.
So let's talk structure. What does this practical exam actually involve? You walk in, what happens?
Okay, so the whole thing is built around 16 separate tasks, or stations, as the SRA calls them.
16, wow.
Yeah, 16 independent scenarios, and they're split. 12 are written tasks and 4 are oral tasks.
16 stations. Spread over how long? Sounds intense.
It usually takes about a week, all told.
Yeah.
It's definitely a marathon, not a sprint.
And what skills are they testing in these stations?
There are 6 core practical skills that come up again and again in the sources. First is client interviewing.
Okay.
And that's always followed up with writing either an attendance note or some legal analysis based on the interview.
Makes sense. What else?
Then you've got advocacy, presenting a case and matter analysis, figuring out the issues, legal research, legal writing like letters or memos, and finally, legal drafting, actually putting together clauses or documents.
And these skills are tested across different areas of law.
Exactly. They're applied in scenarios covering 5 main practice areas: criminal litigation, dispute resolution, property practice, wills and intestacy, so probate stuff, and business law and practice.
So you need broad knowledge and the skills.
Yes. And layered over all of that, absolutely critical, is professional conduct and ethics.
Ah, right. That's woven in everywhere.
Throughout, you need to be able to spot potential ethical problems in the scenarios, conflicts of interest, confidentiality issues, that sort of thing, and show you know how to handle them professionally, like a real solicitor would.
Okay. That integrated ethics part feels really important. So the schedule, you said about a week. How does that break down? Oral first, then written.
Typically, yes. The oral part usually comes first, spread over about 2.5 consecutive days. That's where you do your 4 oral stations, 2 client interviews, each with that follow-up written task, remember?
Right, the note or analysis.
And 2 advocacy presentations. And they mix up the legal areas across those 4 stations. Got it. 2.5 days for the oral part, then the written follows straight on.
Usually, yes. The written component takes place over the next 3 half days. That's where you tackle the remaining 12 stations.
12 written stations in 3 half days. How are those organized?
It's 3 stations for each of the written skills: case analysis, legal research, legal writing, and legal drafting. So 4 skills, 3 stations each.
And are they grouped by subject?
Yes, that seems to be the pattern. Each half day focuses on specific legal areas. So day 1 might be civil and criminal scenarios. Day 2, maybe property and wills. Day 3, business law.
Okay, that grouping probably helps focus your mind a bit each day.
It seems designed that way. So yeah, the whole thing wraps up in about a week. And the SRA usually offers 4 chances to sit it each year: January, April, July, October, roughly.
A demanding week, no doubt. So after all that, how do they actually mark it? How do you pass? Is it just like get more than half right?
It's based on overall performance, but it's a bit more structured than just a raw percentage. All 16 stations are weighted equally. Okay, so each one counts the same, 116th.
Exactly. And then within each station, they assess two things, equally weighted again, your legal skills,
Sure.
how well you actually did the task, like interviewing or drafting.
The how.
Right. And legal knowledge application, did you use the correct law for that scenario?
So skill and knowledge, 50-50 for each task.
Spot on. You need to show you're competent in both aspects across the board.
And you get grades, like A, B, C.
Yes, each station gets an A to F grade. Your final result isn't just an average of those grades, though. It's based on your total performance across all 16 stations, measured against a pass mark that's set for that specific exam sitting.
Ah, so the pass mark might vary slightly each time?
It can, yes, based on the difficulty of that particular exam paper, but crucially, there's no separate pass mark for the oral bits versus the written bits.
Yeah.
It's one overall hurdle.
And what level are they looking for?
The standard is explicitly set as the level expected of a newly qualified solicitor on their very first day of practice. The day one outcomes standard.
High standard, then.
Definitely. But the sources do reassure candidates you don't need perfection on every single point. You just need to demonstrate overall that you meet that professional threshold.
And going back to the pass rate, that 77%, it suggests many are meeting it, maybe helped by that practical experience we mentioned.
That seems to be the most plausible explanation offered in the sources, yes. That mix of knowledge from SQE1 and some practical exposure seems key.
Okay, so it's a big practical test, 16 parts, judged overall against a day one ready standard. How on earth do you plan for something like this? What's the advice from people who've done it?
Planning. Planning, planning, planning. That comes through loud and clear. You absolutely have to look at the SRA's published dates well in advance.
For the exam itself.
Yes, and critically, for the registration windows. The sources are full of warnings. Popular sittings fill up incredibly fast. You need to be ready to book your place.
Right, don't miss the boat on registration.
And also think strategically about timing. How long do you need between getting your CQE1 results and sitting CQE2? Especially if you want to do them close together. Factor in result release dates, registration deadlines. It needs mapping out.
Anything else for the plan?
Definitely keep an eye on the SRA's cutoff dates for changes in the law. You need to know which version of the law will be tested. And as we discussed, think about your qualifying work experience, your QWE. Could doing some before SQE2 help build those practical skills?
Because it all feeds into becoming a solicitor, right? It's not just the exams. It's SQE1, CQE2, the 2 years of QWE, and passing the character and suitability checks.
Exactly. So planning the sequence of all those elements is vital. You can't just look at SQE2 in isolation.
What kind of time frame are we talking for prep?
The general advice seems to be allow a solid 3-6 months just for SQE1 prep. And then for SQE2, you need at least another 2 to 4 months dedicated purely to SQE2 prep before the exam date.
2 to 4 months minimum for SQE2 prep.
That's the strong suggestion. And it connects to an analogy one candidate used, which I thought was great. They compared it to
Athlete training. I saw that one.
yes, training for a competition. It's not about cramming facts the week before. It's about consistent, regular, maybe even daily practice over the long term, building that skill muscle memory.
Like practicing scales if you're a musician.
Exactly. You're
Yeah.
training skills, not just learning information.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift to the actual exam experience. Where does it happen? What are those simulations like?
Right, logistics. It's strictly in person, no remote option currently. The written parts, those 12 stations, are done on computers at Pearson VUE test centers.
And those are worldwide.
Generally, yes. So you might be able to do the written exams in your home country if you're international.
Okay, but what about the oral part?
That's the key difference. The 4 oral stations must be taken in person and only in the UK. The current locations mentioned are London, Cardiff, Manchester, and Birmingham.
Right, that's a huge consideration for international candidates then. You have to travel to the UK for at least part of the exam.
Absolutely. Visas, flights, accommodation, managing jet lag and energy levels.
Yeah.
It adds a whole layer of planning. One candidate even talked about flying between London for the oral and Hong Kong for the written.
Wow. Talk about stressful logistics.
It really underscores the need for careful planning around travel and rest. When you get there, though, the sources say the venues tend to be well-run, the oral stations are one-on-one, you'll interact with an examiner or maybe an actor playing a role, like a client or a judge.
So the client interview stations, how do they work?
You typically get about 15 to 25 minutes for the actual interview simulation with an actor playing the client. And here's a really important insight from candidates. During that live interview, the main thing they're assessing is your communication.
Not necessarily giving perfect legal advice on the spot.
Not primarily, no. It's more about, can you listen effectively? Can you ask the right questions to get the information you need? Can you build rapport and show empathy? Maintain professionalism.
So people skills are key in the moment.
Very much so. Then, after the interview simulation is over, you have a separate task to write up your attendance note or legal analysis based on what happened. That's where your written communication and legal analysis are marked.
Okay, two distinct parts to that station then. What about the advocacy ones?
For advocacy, you usually get about 45 minutes of prep time with the case materials. Then you have around 15 minutes to make your presentation, your submissions to an examiner who's playing the role of a judge.
And they're looking for?
Clear arguments, logical structure, sound legal reasoning. How well you articulate your case based on the facts and the law provided. Good advice was to politely ask for clarification if you're ever unsure about the judge's instructions.
What if English isn't your first language? Are accents or minor grammar mistakes a big issue?
The feedback here is actually quite positive. English is obviously required, but accents are fine as long as you're clear and understandable.
So clarity over accent.
Yes. One candidate, a non-native speaker, mentioned scoring very highly in the interview, suggesting the examiners focus on communication effectiveness and content, not perfect pronunciation.
And in the written tasks, spelling mistakes.
Minor errors in spelling or grammar generally don't matter unless they actually change the legal meaning or make it unclear. The focus is on clear, professional expression, conveying the right legal points accurately, not flawless English prose.
Okay, that's reassuring. What did candidates find toughest about the actual process?
Overwhelmingly. Time management.
The clock is ticking constantly.
Yes. With strict time limits for each station, like 15-25 minutes for an oral task, maybe 30-60 minutes for a written one, and often multiple written tasks back-to-back in a half-day session, you're under constant pressure.
So what's the lesson there?
Prioritize. You have to quickly identify the core issues in a scenario and focus on addressing those. Don't get bogged down in tiny details that eat up time. And practice doing tasks under timed conditions. Build that speed.
Right. Okay, switching gears slightly, I was struck by this phrase from candidate feedback. Painful process, valuable outcome. Tell me more about that.
It really seems to capture the feeling perfectly. The painful process part refers to how incredibly draining the whole exam week is.
Physically and mentally.
Both. People mentioned feeling completely wiped out afterwards, like they couldn't think straight. Some said they'd never want to go through it again. It's intense.
But the valuable outcome part.
That's the flip side. Despite the difficulty, candidates overwhelmingly saw huge value in it. The intense focus on practical skills genuinely develops your abilities. Communication, drafting, research, analysis last year. They felt those skills improved significantly.
So you come out feeling more like a solicitor.
Exactly. More prepared for actual practice. It forces that development.
Did the sources address common worries? Like, is it impossibly hard? Are the questions designed to trick you?
Yes, they did. The consensus seems to be, yes, it covers a wide range, and yes, you need detailed knowledge. But the questions aren't usually designed to be deliberately obscure or tricky.
Okay.
The oral stations often involve fairly routine matters, the kind of thing you'd handle regularly. Interestingly, some candidates actually found the written stations more challenging than expected, particularly getting the level of detail right under time pressure.
That is interesting. I might have assumed the oral part was scarier.
It depends on the person, I suppose. But here's the really encouraging message that came through strongly. If you manage to pass SQE1, you have the necessary legal knowledge foundation.
You know the law.
You know the law.
Oh.
SQE2 is about applying it. And that application skill, that's trainable. It's learnable. Passing SQE1 proves you have the capacity.
That's a really key takeaway. It's not about learning more law. It's about learning how to use the law you know.
Freely. It reframes the challenge, I think.
Okay, so let's really drill down into how to train that application skill. What preparation methods really worked?
Well, we've mentioned planning multi-level plans, monthly, weekly, daily, and that consistent athlete-style training approach. Long-term revision, not gramming.
And building on the SECUE1 knowledge, how specifically?
Your SQE1 notes are gold dust. Review them. Consolidate the key statutes, the main principles for each area. But the aim isn't just rote memorization. It's understanding how that law applies in a practical context.
So, not just knowing that a company needs a resolution.
But knowing which kind of resolution, ordinary, special, is needed for which specific action, based on the Companies Act or the articles, that level of applied understanding. Same for legal writing, yes, no basic formats for letters or memos, but the real marks are in clear analysis and using professional language appropriate for the recipient.
Got it. Now, for building those specific practical skills, what do the sources recommend?
Okay, let's break it down. For client interviewing, role play is king. Grab friends, study buddies, anyone who will play the part of a client, record the sessions if you can bear it, and watch them back.
What should you focus on in those role plays?
Active listening, really hearing what they say and what they don't say. Showing empathy, asking good, open-ended questions to draw out all the necessary facts, and maintaining that professional, calm demeanor throughout. Remember the feedback, people first, law second, in the live interview part.
Okay, advocacy.
For advocacy, compile key legal tests and standards for common applications like bail conditions, grounds for summary judgment, injunction tests. Memorize those core requirements. Then practice structuring your submissions. Polite opening, state your legal basis, apply the facts, clear conclusions stating what you want the judge to order.
Practice out loud.
Definitely. Record yourself. Practice in front of others if possible. Get used to the flow, the pacing, sounding confident.
Makes sense. Writing and drafting.
Legal writing and drafting. Time practice is absolutely essential. Set the clock, write a draft letter, memo, or clause. Then compare it rigorously against model answers or the SRA's marking criteria. Where did you miss points? Was it clear?
Getting feedback helps here too, presumably.
Hugely valuable. If you're on a course, use their marking services. If not, maybe find an experienced mentor or colleague. For drafting specifically, focus on including the necessary legal content for that specific type of clause or document, not just filling a template blindly. Understand why each bit is there.
And legal research.
Legal research. Practice finding the key information, the relevant statutes section, the leading case quickly and accurately. Extract the main points needed to answer the question or write the report. Get good with index searching, keyword searching, and online databases. Speed and precision are key. It's often integrated into other tasks now.
Okay, that's a solid breakdown for each skill. What about how to structure your study time? Any consensus on the best order?
It varied a bit. Some people like starting with subjects they felt were easier to build confidence. Others deliberately tackled their weakest areas first. Some alternated subjects to keep things fresh.
So personal preference plays a part.
Seems so. But what everyone seemed to agree on was the crucial need to block out the last, say, 2-3 weeks, purely for full mock exams.
Simulating the real thing.
Exactly.
Right.
Running through the entire timetable, oral days, written days, switching between tasks under pressure. It's the best way to train your brain for the intensity, find your stamina limits, and pinpoint any remaining weaknesses under genuine exam conditions.
That sounds absolutely vital. Now, learning from mistakes. It's often faster than learning from scratch. What were the common traps or pitfalls candidates fell into, and how can you sidestep them?
Good question. The sources highlighted quite a few recurring themes. First big one, just being unfamiliar with the exam format, not really understanding what each station type requires until too late.
Wasting prep time on the wrong things.
Exactly, the countermeasure. Study the SRA's own specifications and assessment details early. Read accounts from past candidates. Really get into the skin of what's expected for interviews versus advocacy versus drafting, etc.
Okay, know the exam inside out. What else?
Second, template obsession. People memorize rigid templates for, say, letters or attendance notes, but then they can't adapt when the scenario doesn't quite fit.
So how to avoid that?
Focus on understanding the underlying principles and legal requirements. Use templates as flexible guides, maybe checklists, but don't rely on them slavishly. Your knowledge application is what matters.
Right. Makes sense. Third pitfall.
Ignoring or downplaying communication skills, especially in the oral tasks. Focusing only on getting the right legal answer during the interview, for instance.
Instead of managing the interaction.
Precisely. Successful candidates stress the need to practice active listening, empathy, and just general professional interaction. That people first, law second idea for interviews. Show you can handle the human element.
Okay. What's next?
Fourth, over-practicing single subjects in isolation. Getting really good at, say, property drafting, but then struggling to switch to a criminal advocacy task quickly during the exam week.
Losing mental agility.
Kind of. The fix suggested was using the bucket principle.
Yeah.
Yes, fill your knowledge buckets for each area, but then regularly practice simulations that force you to jump between different skills and legal contexts, just like the real exam. Train that switching ability.
Good advice.
Fifth, neglecting mindset management. You can know all the law and skills, but if nerves or fatigue take over, performance plummets.
So psychological prep matters.
Hugely. Build breaks and balance into your revision schedule. Use positive self-talk or affirmations if that works for you. And try to reframe how you see the examiners they're assessing competence fairly, not trying to catch you out. See them as helpers in demonstrating your skills.
Okay, manage the mind as well as the material.
Yeah.
Any more pitfalls?
Yes, one last crucial one. Overlooking ethical detail.
Sure.
Those professional conduct issues we mentioned. They can be subtle, like Easter eggs hidden in the scenarios.
Easy to miss if you're focused only on the main legal problem.
Very easy. The countermeasure is active vigilance. In every single station, consciously ask yourself, is there a potential conflict here? Is the client asking me to do something dodgy? Is there a capacity issue? Review the SRA Code of Conduct principles beforehand so you recognize red flags and know how to respond professionally. Showing ethical awareness is non-negotiable.
Wow, those are really practical warnings. So let's flip it. Beyond just avoiding mistakes and passing, what did the really high-scoring candidates do? What pushed them into the top bands?
Okay, moving from passing to excelling. Several strategies emerged from the experiences shared. First, really master the assessment criteria.
Go beyond just reading them.
Yes, deeply understand the SRA's marking matrices for each skill. Know exactly what behaviors and content earn the higher marks. Tailor your performance to hit those specific descriptors.
Be strategic about hitting the marks.
Exactly. Second, emphasize quality in the details. This covers everything from professional formatting and written tasks, precise language, showing good etiquette in oral interactions, even how you handle a question you genuinely don't know the answer to, admitting it and stating you'd research is better than bluffing.
Projecting professionalism throughout.
Yes. Treat every single task as if you were a practicing solicitor interacting with colleagues or clients. That quality shines through.
What else helps boost scores?
Third, cultivate quick thinking and adaptability. Practice analyzing scenarios under tight time pressure. Maybe do speed drills. Work on summarizing complex info quickly. This helps you stay composed and respond effectively when faced with unexpected twists.
Train your brain to be faster.
And more flexible. Fourth, and linked to the pitfalls, maintain a positive mindset and actively build confidence. This comes from thorough prep, but also requires conscious effort during the exam. Let go of a station you think went badly. Focus entirely on the next one. Keep seeing the examiners as neutral assessors.
Don't let one bad station derail the rest.
Crucial. Fifth, consciously adjust your body and mind for peak performance. Plan your sleep, food, and exercise in the run-up. Use those mock exams to simulate the schedule and get your body clock attuned to the demands of the week. Physical readiness supports mental sharpness.
Makes sense. Any final high-scoring tips?
Yes. Sixth, employ effective on-the-spot exam strategies. Use the provided draft paper wisely. Maybe jot down a quick outline or checklist before starting a written task or advocacy prep. If you happen to finish the station early, use that time efficiently. Don't just sit there. Quickly review your answer against the requirements. Did you miss anything obvious?
Use every second effectively.
And even if you're really unsure about a question, attempt it. Laying out a logical structure or identifying the relevant issues shows your thinking process, which can still earn partial credit.
It's almost always better than leaving a complete blank.
Those are fantastic concrete strategies for aiming high. So finally, let's talk resources. What tools and materials did candidates find most useful in their prep? Top of the list, always. The SRA's own official materials. The exam specifications, the assessment criteria, the sample questions available on their website, that's your primary source.
The blueprint, really.
Absolutely. Though a small caution from some candidates. They felt the official sample questions might be a touch easier than the real thing. So use them, but maybe don't rely on them as the absolute ceiling of difficulty.
Okay. What about courses?
Training institution courses are obviously a major resource for many. They offer structured learning, targeted practice, often access to lots of mock questions, and feedback. They do represent a significant cost, though.
So self-study is possible.
It is? Yes, according to the sources, but it requires immense discipline in sourcing good materials yourself.
Are there past papers?
Not official SQE2 past papers. However, candidates mention that old QLTS OSCE papers can be a useful reference, as the OSCE tested very similar practical skills. Finding those might take some digging. and many training providers offer their own mock exams. Some candidates mention CELE SQE, for example, offering a large bank of mocks, even with AI marking features. Good mocks are invaluable for practice.
What about learning from peers?
Definitely. Online communities are huge. Reddit forums like RSQE, LinkedIn groups, platforms popular in specific regions. These are great for sharing experiences, tips, and finding study partners.
Just need to be careful with the info.
Yes, always critically evaluate advice shared online. What worked for one person might not work for you. Adapt, don't just copy. But the support network can be fantastic.
Any books or other materials?
General legal skills books can be helpful for principles of interviewing, advocacy, drafting, etc. Access to resources like practical law, if you have it, is useful. Revisiting the SRA's functioning legal knowledge, FLK, lists from SQE1 helps map out the law you need to apply. Some found resources from law firms helpful too. Starting with English language materials is generally recommended for accuracy.
Any tech tools?
Some candidates mentioned using mock exam apps or online platforms for drilling questions, like the SQE app from CELE again. Basic tools like Grammarly can help polish written English, and good legal dictionary is always handy.
And finally, official channels.
Don't forget the SRA itself. If you have genuine questions about the rules or process, use their official help and support or customer service channels. And keep a close eye on the SRA website and any emails from them for official updates or changes.
That's a really comprehensive list of resources. Okay, so wrapping this up, we've gone from understanding the SQE2's structure and why it's so challenging, right through to very practical, hands-on advice drawn from candidate experiences on how to plan, prepare, avoid common traps, aim high, and use the right tools.
Yeah, I think the big picture is clear. The SQE2 is a significant hurdle, no doubt about it. But this deep dive shows it's absolutely passable. It just requires that focused, diligent preparation and, importantly, the right mindset going in.
And it feels like beyond just ticking the box to qualify, the whole process, the preparation, the exam itself really does build those core practical skills you'll need day in, day out as a solicitor. The value goes beyond just the pass certificate.
I completely agree. Which brings us to a final thought for you, the listener, to maybe chew on. Given how much these SQE2 focuses on simulating real-world legal practice, how does that change your perspective on what preparing for a legal career really involves? And thinking about everything we've covered today, what's the one skill or maybe the one strategy that you'll prioritize focusing on first as you start or continue your own SQE2 preparation journey?
Something definitely worth reflecting on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into CQE2. Hope these insights are genuinely helpful, and we wish you all the very best with your preparation and the exam itself.